Well, we've had the first race of the season, and that was a dampener, wasn't it? Really put all the hype and the expectation out the window. I mean, qualifying just set us up for something that should be absolutely brilliant, and we got, well, nothing more of what we got last year, didn't we? Max Verstappen absolutely run away with it, even more so than last year. Last year he only won by 10 seconds. This one was a 22 second lead from his teammate Sergio Perez. And we've seen a lot of patterns that we kind of saw last season emerge again, isn't it? There wasn't much incident throughout the race. I mean, the only thing that I could go back to was the lap 1 incident with Nico Hülkenberg going into the back of Lance Stroll, and that scuppered both of their races. And we've seen that from last season also, didn't we? A brilliant start for the Haas team, and then just lap 1 incidents just threw them way back. Both ended up 20th and 19th after that first corner. And after that, it was a really good start from Zhou Guanzu. Kevin Magnussen made up 3 and 4 places each. Logan Sargent actually had a good start, didn't he? Ended up in P14, and then it just went horribly wrong for him from there on. In terms of strategy, it was all pretty much straightforward. It was get rid of them softs, and it was just 2 hard tyres towards the end. I know a couple of them went for softs, and probably just the Red Bulls. We see Daniel Ricciardo try that as well, but it was just more teams that were way out and just thought, let's throw a Hail Mary at this one. But yeah, predominantly it was just soft hards. It was really tough track on tyres, wasn't it? And yeah, I think the only guys, there's a couple of guys that can come through with the heads really held high, and we'll go through them. But the key race moments, really, there was only a handful. Russell got into P2, passing Charles Leclerc, and then Charles Leclerc seemed to have trouble early on, didn't he, with his locking, and was really slow. Didn't really make an impression, did he, on George Russell. Then had Sergio Perez behind him, who got the move on Sainz early, did Perez. Perez made short move of Charles Leclerc, and then was up chasing George Russell after that. And then Carlos Sainz was the star, really, wasn't he, early on? He had a brilliant race, made his way. Poor start, dropped behind Perez, but I don't think his race was really with Perez. Actually, if you look at it at the end, if he'd probably kept that place, it might have been some sort of chance of him staying there, because he kept Perez on, as didn't he, as Carlos Sainz, just a couple of seconds behind him in the end. But yeah, 2 passes on Charles Leclerc from Carlos Sainz. It was absolutely brilliant moves from him. And other than that, the Mercedes were, disappointing, poor lap race pace. Alpines were poor. But yeah, let's go through each and every one of the teams and how they got on through the race. And we'll start with the race winners. Red Bull, it's a 1-2 for them, and Max Verstappen started first. His only issue was sort of really just to keep first. He did that, decent start. And then he was just comfortable. By lap 8, he was already 6 seconds ahead. He pitted on lap 17. He was comfortably like 29 seconds ahead at that stage. He was like, he just checked out basically, didn't he? He was a second to 0.8 tenths faster than Sergio Perez, pretty much predominantly throughout that race. Won by 22 seconds in the end, and I'm sure it would have been more. He just kept, everything cool and just managed it to the end, didn't he? Max Verstappen, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant race from him. But yeah, ominous it was, really, wasn't it, from the Red Bulls. Sergio Perez, a good recovery. He started 5th, he finished 2nd. It just shows how good that car was. It was a nice move on Charles Leclerc. And then a good move on George Russell, and he forced him into a bit of a mistake, and then made that move there. And yeah, it was just, he'd be disappointed actually, because the one, again, sort of like we're going to bang on this drum like we've seen last season, and this is where we're going to go on about this race potentially, of just like sort of shattered a lot of hopes for the season, hasn't it? Sergio Perez is way off Max Verstappen, and there's no chance, it looks like, that we're going to get a sort of championship fight or revival from him to sort of go against his teammate, is he? It just seems like he's absolutely nowhere near, out of touch. I mean, at one point it was only 3 seconds behind, mind you, so it's not like Perez had a massive job to do and to claw his way back, and then his tyres had gone by the time he got to Max. He was, like I said, just 2 or 3 seconds out after the second stops, and it was about 4 or 5 after the stops, and he just absolutely flattened him, did Max Verstappen. And Perez was, he probably have a lot more head scratching to do after that one. The Ferraris next up, it was 3 and 4. It was 2x2, isn't it? Early on. Well, what can you say here? They were sort of saying that they've got over these car issues in race pace, especially with the tyre deg and all that sort of shebang, but it didn't really show in the race, did it? Charles Leclerc struggled early on, didn't he? Got beat by George Russell on lap 1, and that sort of set the tone for his race a little bit, and then started early on, just really struggled with just the braking, wasn't it? And disappointing odd that, because at the second half of the race he was absolutely really on it again. Made a couple of places back up and then got back into 4th place, but he'll be disappointed, I think, especially considering they are seeming to have the same issues that they had on last year's car, and they not really got rid of them. And he's beaten by his teammate who's actually moving on, and you know, let's get to him. Carlos Sainz, my driver of the day. He was absolutely brilliant, wasn't he? It's a shame, like I said, he lost out on the start to Sergio Perez. It was a really nice move on lap 11 to get past Charles Leclerc, and then into P4. And then he lost out due to the undercut, didn't he? Because Charles Leclerc came in the lap early, and it's strong here in Bahrain. And yeah, I think he'll be scratching his head on that one again, saying, what's going on here? I guess Charles Leclerc wasn't even the lead driver, was he, to get that preferential sort of strategy, unless that's just set before the race. And I think that's, you know, something that might irk Carlos Sainz going forward. I know he's the guy leaving, but he'd probably, you know, that is these small details and things like this that could irk him and turn that relationship sour before he leaves. But yeah, he did his talking on the track, didn't he? And yeah, started 4th, dropped back to 5th, finished in 3rd. 2 brilliant passes. The second one on the came out of the pits was an absolutely brilliant pass down into turn 1. Really good on the brakes. I mean, it was close as well, because if he'd overdone it a bit, he had a Mercedes he was taking out. So there was a bit of risk involved for Carlos Sainz, but he did an absolutely tremendous job, I think, on that one. And he passed Russell into turn 1 on lap 18, and he was on it, absolutely on it at that stage. Just after the first stops, he pit lap 36, and it looked like, could he be in a battle with Sergio Perez? I mean, at that point it was 2.7 seconds behind just before that second stop, and I thought the undercut might throw him right in the mix. But just before that, I don't know if Ferrari just didn't have the tyres to get into the second stop window to then make the early stop and get him in the mix of trying to get past Sergio Perez. But it was a really good race from Carlos Sainz. I think he can be massively happy with that. Not far off Sergio Perez in the end. And then comes the Mercedes, and it was a 5th place finish for George Russell. He had a pretty decent weekend overall, hasn't he? Decent qualifying, solid race, I suppose. It was a nice move to get into 2nd place early on, but from there on he then lost out to Perez. Yeah, on lap 14, and to be fair, the back marker didn't help him at all with that one, but it looked inevitable that Perez would pass him. He seemed to then have some sort of power unit issue, didn't he? It was just sort of overheating, really, and then they had to worry about that. And then it was a mistake, which was a bit odd from him, but we've seen he's made these now, and it's something that he'd probably want to sort of iron out. That let Charles Leclerc past on lap 47, and he was pretty much done from there. A 5th place finish from him, but he had a bit of pressure at the end because Lando Norris was charging hard and fast up behind him. But he had enough pace in that Mercedes to hold on there. Lewis Hamilton, it was a 9th place or 7th place finish for him in the end, started 9th. He was stuck behind the 2 McLarens on Alonso early on, finally made the move on Alonso, but then he had some sort of battery issue he was reporting, and then also a broken seat by lap 25. He's finished just sort of 1 point, just short of 2 seconds behind Lando Norris in the end, so I think he'd be alright with that, but it's a lot of work to do to catch up to be in the race for some sort of race wins this season. Overall, they could probably take some heart, but the way that race has run at the end, I think I'd be disappointed. And overall, I think it was not a great weekend for Lewis Hamilton. Up next, the Aston Martins. Sergio. Up next is the McLarens, and actually it was a really good job from Lando Norris, wasn't it? Started 7th, finished in 6th. Nice move on Alonso into P6 early on. Did well to hold off Hamilton early as well, but just couldn't close down George Russell, and I think he can be happy, because where they were last season and to where they are now is a massive jump, and if they can sort of make the progress that they did last season, there's only room to go forward. But I think he probably expected to be closer to potentially the Ferraris in that, and so did I, to be honest with you. But their race pace was solid, but a good result. He beat a Mercedes, and that's probably what the best that car had underneath him. And I think he can be happy with the weekend. Oscar Piastri, he started 8th and finished 8th in the end. It was actually a decent race from him, wasn't it? He just followed behind Lando Norris for much of that race, and it wasn't where he was sort of 10-15 seconds behind Norris. It was in touching distance, 5-6 seconds behind, so he can be much happier with that in terms of how he managed his race. The only big disappointment with him was he got undercut by Lewis Hamilton, and he lost out on that place, because it looked like he'd be in for a decent P7 finish from him. Next up is the Aston Martins. Fernando Alonso started 5th, 6th, finished 9th. Dropped places early on to the McLarens and then to Lewis Hamilton, and just stayed down in P9, and they just didn't have any race pace whatsoever, especially with the guys ahead of them. And I think, we seem to have got this sort of status quo where we ended up last season, we've gone this season, and I'm not sure what all the guys have been doing over the winter, have they? Because they've just sort of come back with all gone faster, but not really seem to have got over their issues that we're seeing last season. Lance Stroll next up, started 12th, finished in 10th in the end, and actually from going last in the first corner, I think that was a really good recovery drive into getting back into the points. It's probably the best he could have hoped for, and a really decent job from Lance Stroll this weekend. Next up is the Haas team, and Kevin Magnussen was brilliant. Started 15th, finished 12th, and overall a very good race from him. A really good start. It was a poor qualifying session yesterday, and he can be really happy with that. His teammate Nico Hülkenberg was, he'll be disappointed. P10 start, taken out Lance Stroll, and then ended up last, and then he must have had some damage, because he didn't really make any impression on the race from there onwards. After that was, we'll go to the Sauber and Stake F1, and Zhou Guanyu, what a fantastic job he did. He started in 17th. It was a really good start. He was finished in 11th. It's a shame, because he was looking like he could be in the points at one point, and he just missed out in the end. Overall, he'd be disappointed with not having the point, but actually a much better race weekend. Beat his teammate Bottas comfortably. Bottas started 16th, ended up in 19th, and he just got the worst pit stop in the world, didn't he? A 50-second stop. They had some sort of issue with that front wheel, and he wasn't really in the race anyway up until that point, so it wasn't like he was on for a decent result. Joe had the measure of him all race, to be honest with you, so hats off to Joe. Fantastic job from him there. After that was the Racing Bulls, Daniel Ricciardo, followed by his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, and the pair of them won't be happy at all with each other, to be honest with you, isn't it? Daniel Ricciardo was on the soft tyres at the end, wanted to go and try and attack Kevin Magnussen, and to be fair, Yuki was just half a second behind Hülkenberg, K-Mag, and with a chance to try and get into, was in the DRS to try and make that move on him. Didn't really want to cede the place despite being told by the team to give up that spot, and then by the time he did that, Max Verstappen came round, and that sort of, they had to cede place, and then they lost that momentum, did both of them, and Danny Rick didn't even make any impression on K-Mag, and Yuki lost out his position, or told to hand over the position to Danny Rick. I thought they might do a switch around on that one just to sort of ease a bit of the tensions, but it wasn't to be. I think Daniel Ricciardo will be disappointed with that one. Started 14th, yes, he's beaten his teammate and finishing 13th, but really it was team orders that let him past, and despite him being on the softer and faster tyres than his teammate, was matching, he was only marginally faster than Yuki, if at all, to be honest with you. Yuki was solid all race, right up there, looked like he'd be on some points at one point. Faster than Daniel Ricciardo for most of the race, and yeah, if he had probably had them soft tyres, I think he would have done a better job than Daniel Ricciardo did, and I think he'd be really disappointed with the team orders on that one. Next up following that was the Williams. Alex Albon, he finished in 15th place, and yeah, it looked like he might be in for some decent results, didn't he? He went really long on that first stop, just like Fernando Alonso on the softs, and I thought maybe this will be the one that gets him in the mix, that he managed to get the tyres to last that long. He came out and was thereabouts within the top 10 of some points, 13th place I think he was at one point, and then it just seemed to not work on the hard tyres for the Williams team at all, and then just dropped back. And then he just, wasn't looking like he was going to be in for a shout of some points from there on. A decent 15th place finish. Logan Sargent, it's been horrible, hasn't it? He had some sort of issue, didn't he, about lap 10 or 11 where he ran wide, out-braked himself, and then just took forever to sort of just get moving again, didn't it? Looked like at one point that would be his out of the race, but he managed to keep running. He ran back last throughout the race. He must have sort of had some issues that he was carrying there potentially, where it looked that way from the outside, because he was so slow. I mean, he's like nearly 35 seconds down on Bottas in the end as well. So the only team more disappointed will be the guys that we're coming to now, is the Alpine team. Pierre Gasly started last, finished 18th. His teammate Ocon started in 19th, finished 17th, and they have had an absolute stinker, isn't it? I thought they would be much better than that, to be honest with you. I thought the team in trouble at the start of the season would be the Haas team, and they've really turned things around. But the Alpine, they've made big changes, didn't they? They got rid of Otmar Safnauer and made a big whole change with the CEO and everything like that to try and get things right for this season. They sort of sacrificed the end of last season to get things right with this season, and it's gone. Well, the last team, the team 10 on the grid at the minute, and they were horrible. They absolutely just had no pace. Neither of them made any impression. I mean, Gasly at one point looked like we might be in for something decent. It was up about 14th place, and I think that's just because of where the strategy and the teams might have fallen out. But yeah, a lot of work to do for the Alpine guys, and they'll be massively disappointed from there. But yes, it's a thankfully short race, and we're going straight into Saudi. Let's hope for some more closer action up at the front at least, or even in that midfield pack, which looked really tight and close together, but we didn't really see the action that we thought we'd get here at Bahrain. Sometimes that can happen. But yeah, the track I love next, absolutely fantastic. The supersonic Monaco, isn't it? It's the Saudi Grand Prix. I can't wait for the action to get going again. It's another Friday qualifying, Saturday race there next weekend. Can't wait for the action to get started. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. See you next time.